at the end of high school, I went to a Bible college. I really really struggled that summer with sin
Mm.
and shame but when I got to that Bible Institute, it was just a 10-month program. Shout out to CBI
Woo.
in California, Yucca Valley. And when I got there, I think the first thing that the Lord spoke to me, like, I needed to get this through to you, that um, I had to ask the question: in is my sin or my shame greater than the accomplishment done on the cross? And
Mm.
it's like, wait, how prideful for me to think that.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, how prideful for me to hold on to shame or hold on to sin if Jesus has already covered it. Like, do I really believe that? And so that's the question I had to answer, and that's what the Lord spoke to me. And so I'd say that was really a big moment, And it's kind of crazy because even with all that zeal for the Lord throughout, I mean, middle school and high school, um, the Lord had the Lord had to teach me something so late,
Mm.
like that simplest teaching in church, like just believe that.
Mm.
And I'd say that was a moment of victory. Like that's when I like, oh snap, like I have victory in Christ and I
Mm.
could live like it.
Wow.
And yeah, so I'd say that's probably the biggest part of my testimony.
Wow. That's awesome. Man, because that's so true, Ryan, that so many people can get so caught up in this cycle where, I don't know if you ever struggled with assurance per se, in terms of, did you ever feel like you lost your salvation when you're in those seasons of shame, or was it just, you just felt shame?
Hmm. Ye- I wouldn't say. I don't know.
Yeah,
I,
no, that's
I
fine.
definitely felt like I was trampling the Son of God under my feet.
Mm.
I definitely felt like I'm counting. Yeah, I definitely I think I turned to like the hardest verses and
Hmm.
they didn't really like help me in that time in a
Yeah.
way, which is kind of interesting. Um, but yeah, I felt like Jesus was like weeping over my sin, which is
Okay.
which is I don't know.
So maybe not a sense where you felt like you lost your salvation, which is another whole conversation starter for another time. But maybe you just felt like, man, you're really letting him down so much,
Yeah.
and he's really disappointed.
Mm.
You have a relationship with him. It's like a father who's constantly disappointed in their son. You feel like you might be disappointing him so much, and that shame. And when but in reality, yes, God is disappointed when we fall into sin. That's not His plan for us. But for us to wallow in our shame and self pity, and like you said so beautifully, right? As you learned from that camp, or not the camp, the Bible college, that, man, how dare we ever think that our sin's so great that God, Jesus' death on the cross could not cover that? Like, that is a kind of a prideful thing, saying, I messed up
Mhm.
so bad that the blood of Christ can't wash over that. Ooh, all right, we need to check ourselves before we wreck ourselves, type of situation. And unfortunately, I think a lot of us do wallow, is the word I like to use, in shame, right? And it um, really breaks down our relationship with the Lord. And the verse I love to turn to, Ryan, I mean, it's a verse that you clung to as well, or continue to cling to, is Romans 8:1, where it says that there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ Jesus. Um, yes, we do fall in sin, and we do need to feel sorrowful for our sin. If you don't feel sorrowful for your sin and you're just calloused and you're like, the grace of God is sufficient, so usually there's two extremes, right, Ryan? You got one who's never sorrowful and they're like, the grace of God can cover it, so I'm good. And there's the other side, which kind of you're dealing with, is
Yeah.
that I'm so shameful, right? I feel so wrong for my sin, right? And both are not places we want to be, right? To those who don't or feel calloused and are abusing God's grace, we need to be like, hey, listen up. You got to realize that your sin is damaging your relationship with the Lord, and it's damaging other people, right? There's a ripple effect when you sin. It's not just affecting you, it's affecting other people. So that's the message that this guy needs to hear.
Mm.
Your situation, you're like, you understand the damage of sin, right? But you just can't get past it per se. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe you can comment on it. But for that person, it's more like, no, 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 no. The grace of God is sufficient, right? You don't have to worry about Christ not loving you any less, type thing. Yes, we want to pull you out of the sin, right?
Yeah.
That's sanctification. We don't want someone to stay in their sinful ways, but to hear that assurance that, wow, God still loves me despite my sin. He's still faithful, right? You think of the prodigal son, right? The father who represent God in that story was waiting for his son to return, right?
Yeah.
And when he saw him, what did he do?
Ran to him.
Ran to him, right? Which was not customary for grown men to do in Hebraic culture, right? He girded up the loins of his tunic, right? And showed his legs, ooh, and he ran, which is just crazy to think about. Yeah, I can take 100 steps away from Christ. All it takes is one step to get back to him, type thing. So depends who you are. You got to hear the harder version or the softer version. Does that make sense, Ryan?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's awesome that you share that. Don't sit in your shame, guys. You know, God's grace is sufficient.
Yeah. What I love about that story is when the son says to the father, first thing he says to him, Lord, I'm unworthy to be called, or
we're unworthy to be called your son. Make me one of your servants.
Yeah. That's like the main point. Yeah. I'm unworthy to be called your son. And then the father doesn't even acknowledge it.
Right. He's
He
like,
just, let's kill the fatted calf.
Exactly.
Let's throw a party for my son that was once dead is alive because he's here, you know.